Hello, friends. Amy Calandrino here, and I'm back to you with the latest installment of the Performance Mindset Podcast. After over a decade and a half of advising small and medium-sized businesses as well as families with respect to commercial real estate, I've met some impactful and influential leaders along the way. The goal of this podcast is introduce you to some of those folks, so hopefully you can gain some insights with respect to business, commercial real estate, and or mindset, or all of the above. So if you're wanting to grow, you are tuning into the right show. Today, I have with me Ken Ashley, who I got to meet through CREi Summit, which we will chat some about. But he is, outside of that, a senior director at Cushman in Wakefield, and his expertise is tenant representation. He's been a trusted advisor to many Fortune 500 companies. And again, like I talked about, he's the founder of CREi Summit and the innovator behind CREi Plus platforms. And what those are too is to facilitate and foster connections between those in the commercial real estate field. His commitment to the industry and his ability to forge relationships IRL in real life and online is second to none. And he's just been positioned as a powerful deal maker and connector. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Very kind. Appreciate it.
Well, and the listeners may not know, but you had a thing to do with me having this podcast. I wouldn't have had it if not for CREi. So there you go.
Yeah, very excited to see the trajectory and the success of this podcast, and delighted that it occurred at the CREi event. So congratulations.
Thank you. So, well, let's talk about a little bit before we talk, because we'll probably talk about commercial real estate trends and what you're seeing quite a bit. But before we get into that, let's talk about CREi Plus, the impetus between that, and then I'll let you roll.
Sure. Well, thank you, Amy. So just to explain what we're trying to do at CREi, it stands for Commercial Real Estate Influence or Influencer. And we now publish 7 lists, where each list has a volunteer curator over the top of it. And I guess I serve as editor-in-chief of the final list, the 7th list that we're going to announce.
I know. I'm like, what is the 7th list?
Well, it's a podcast list of the best commercial real estate podcasts. And we've got 2 great list curators working on that. But what we're trying to accomplish is to help people in business development. And I've been in major account sales for over 30 years now. And I know there are 2 things you have to do to be successful in business development once you've identified a prospect. The first is selling. And selling, quite simply, is speaking and listening with the intent to convince. And for most brokers, if you can't do that, you probably need to find another industry. Not everybody can, but if you're going to be in our industry, you need to be able to sell. But the second is much harder, and that is marketing. And marketing is what they think about you before you walk in the room. I have a degree in marketing. I think a lot about it. It's obviously a passion project for me. But here we are in a post-COVID world with digital tools, with all this data, and a lot of the tools are free or virtually free. But not many people are using those tools well in our industry. And so the idea that we had was, it's great if you can go to college. Awesome. I have that marketing degree. But the professors aren't on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
And our friends in internal marketing and companies are wonderful, but they're not on the front lines. What if we could take some of the best marketers in North America and bring them together, and iron sharpens iron, and we could have discoveries and go, oh my gosh, that's really cool what you're doing with your podcast or with this certain call to action or this marketing approach. These are very powerful tools that are used by a lot of industries, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve. And the last thing I'll say is that we have curated a culture at CREi that has something called an abundance mentality. And our industry is, as you would know, a lot of people are very closed, and I call it walking down cornrows. You don't want to do it on your own row. You keep your stuff, and I'll keep my stuff. No, I mean, we're very sharing and very open. We, of course, don't share client information, but in terms of how we run our businesses, and you know what? You get a lot more than you give in that kind of environment.
Absolutely. I found that to be true. Everyone to have more of an abundance growth mindset. I believe personally there's plenty of success to go around, and why can't we all be a better beacon for commercial real estate. And
Mhm.
I think sometimes in our industry, people could have, even like attorneys, people have negative connotations of attorneys. I think, or like commercial real estate professionals, I think being able to position yourself in a better, more positive light benefits the entire community. And, for us all to get more business and succeed together is amazing. So we have 7 lists. So we have women, TikTok,
Yeah. Yeah.
Instagram,
Right.
LinkedIn.
Right.
What am I missing? Like
The
Twitter, X,
podcast
and
list,
podcast.
and then there actually are 2 versions of the Twitter list. Not meaning to confuse people,
Oh, that's
but
right. That's right.
there's a Twitter list of transactors, so brokers like you and me, Amy, and then there's a list of people who are real estate investors, so-called retwit. And we decided to keep them separate because they're very different in terms of what the issues are in the retweet world versus brokers. There's some overlap, but there's a different mindset.
That makes sense. Yes, yes, that's really cool. I was like, what is the other one? But yeah, so yeah, there's 2 Twitter/X lists. So, but yeah, I think it's a great community. And then off of that, you created CREi Plus,
Right.
which is kind of, you go to this, it's great time, but then what's happening in between? It seems like that is to help kind of bridge the gap and maybe even facilitate more conversations.
That's exactly right. And what we realized is that people leave the summit every year. If you've not experienced it, I mean, Amy, obviously you have multiple years. It's a great experience, and you come home and you're all charged up and you feel wonderful and excited.
Yeah.
But then it's in September, and then the holidays hit, and all of a sudden it's January, and you kind of lost your momentum, your mojo. So what CREi Plus does is a couple of important things. First of all, one of the biggest, we didn't have a lot of complaints, but one of the complaints we had was, I want to go to all the sessions. Well, now you can, because we're spending a substantial sum of money to record with a professional film crew all the sessions this year, and the only place you can get it is in the online community. The second thing is, as we've seen with some national press, if we used some of the social media platforms, they could be taken away, and it would be unfortunate to build an entire community. I'm referring to TikTok,
Yeah.
and then have a owner of a company or a government agency somehow shut down our community. So we're on a Mighty Networks chassis, which is a company that builds communities just like this. And we have Noah Rosen, who is his title is cruise director, and his job is to help create engagement and to keep energy in these communities, because they only work if people lean in. And then we ask people, we call it 5x5. If you'll just spend 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week in the community, like I said a minute ago, if you'll give a little bit of yourself, you'll get so much in return. So it's a great way. If we want you to come to the summit, because we started with handshakes and hugs, and we love that. But we also want to encourage people to join this online community, and it's a few $100 a year. It's not a lot to join.
No, no. And yeah, it's interesting. I went to go log in. I was like, oh, it's recognizing me. I'm part of what's called a podcast army, and of podcasters now that are
Cool.
all hosts of podcasts. We kind of come together to kind of trade notes and that kind of thing. It's pretty cool.
The,
It is cool. There's so many things to do. So many in between
yes,
doing deals. So both of you and
I know.
I are deal makers. So we have all these marketing tools and we get this business. So well let's rewind. So your season now, you've been in this a while. What about someone looking to get started in commercial real estate?
Yeah.
What would you recommend to them?
Well, if you're looking to get started, it is actually the best time. If you think about market cycles, and they go up and they go down, you would want to start at the bottom of a cycle and ride the next cycle up. And I am firmly convinced, and it depends on what kind of brokerage you want to do,
Mhm.
but I am firmly convinced that people that do what you do and people that do what I do are going to be very busy for a few reasons over the next 3 or 4 years. One of them is that companies are taking far too little office space. And I get excited because I'm going to get to fix lots of mistakes and help people out of difficult situations. I think we've sort of forgotten that we are going to grow. We are going to need more butts that need seats, and not everyone can work remotely all the time.
Mm-mm.
But I think the second thing in terms of advice, I'm 85% of the way through a book called The Real Estate Prescription, which advises people about how to get into our business. And when I meet with young people, I typically write a 6 or 8 point prescription and I sign it, put their name at the top, and date it. And so, what I would tell you if you're a person interested in getting into business is first of all, make sure that you got your financial house in order. Because if you're going to come into a commission only environment, you need to be able to sustain life. I valeted cars when I started. I have a hard luck story, just like everybody does at the beginning of the business. But if you can get the rest of your life in order, that's great. And then the second thing is a focus on a certain community. I created what I call the meat sheet. So go start meeting executives, and the thing that people in their 50s love to do is give advice. So ask executives for advice, not a job. And then all of a sudden, once they start talking about the advice and you start taking it, then perhaps that leads to the job opportunity.
Mm.
And the final thing I would say is the riches are in the niches. And we talk in the book about how to pick a market area and create a business plan. You can meet with someone in your community who is already in our business to get some help with this. But people that show up with the forethought and the planning, even if it's not what you decide to do, go a lot further. And by the way, that business plan can be 3 or 4 pages. It does not have to be a 40-page tome. That's
Mm.
too long.
Right.
Less is more or less.
Yeah. I think having a business plan is key. When I decided to grow my firm, I had like a business. I mean, I had a business plan when I first got started, and then I updated it, and then didn't always keep it updated. And I think that was when I had trouble, growing my business. I think if you're just going to be a practitioner, I think I was in a unique position as a broker where the two, but definitely just getting started. You have your own business, but then having in mind what you want to do, how many dials you need to make, and holding yourself accountable to all those different things. But I think coming with an open mind and just not expecting anything in return is key too.
Yeah. And all the commercial real estate, publicly traded anyway, public real estate firms publish free market data. So you can go to any of the brands and read. So if you're going to go sit down with an executive, I happen to be in Atlanta. So if you're
Right.
going to sit down with an Atlanta-based executive, you will look really smart if you've read about the market that he or she is in. So if they're multifamily, go read the report. It's free. It's right there,
Right.
and ask them smart questions about their industry and about their segment, and you will totally differentiate. I have something called the 70-30 principle, and that is that in any customer prospect interaction, I want 70% of the conversation to be about them. I ask them questions, and 30% about me because it's weird and boring if you don't. But they also have to remember you. And then when I leave an interaction, and this would apply to a young person, I go out to my car and I pull up Evernote and I dictate everything I can remember that they've said. And if I have the ability to take notes, I will. But even so, I'll dictate, hey, Johnny plays baseball. He's in seventh grade, married to such and such, and here's how we met. All of those details, and record them. And then before the next interaction, of course, you're going to look it up. People don't really care what you know at some certain level of expertise. They assume that you're an expert. What they care is what you know about them and what you can remember.
It's so my trick when I really started going in this industry is there's a book called Never Eat Alone. And I don't think there was even Evernote at the time, but I would take someone's business card and then I would staple it to a index card. And on the back of the index card, I wrote everything. And then when I finally got like Salesforce, this was only like 5 years ago. When I got Salesforce, I put all the information that I had on these shoe boxes of information into there. But it was for me the writing it down stuck it to my memory. But yeah, I'd be like, oh, Nicholas is 3 and Susie is 4 and they live in this area of town. And I found it all to be interesting because that makes us all unique. So
Well, one tip, if you're listening and looking to figure out what questions to ask, there's a guy named Harvey McKay and he wrote a list. It's free online called McKay's 66,
Ooh.
and there are 66 questions. Harvey was an amazing man. He bought a bankrupt envelope company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he became very successful. And his whole shtick was, if I can differentiate a white envelope, which is undifferentiatable, you can do much better by just focusing on people. So he asked his salespeople to ask those 66 questions. Now, I don't agree with all of them. Some of them are very personal type questions, but you can develop your list of 30 or 40 really easily, and you will know a ton about someone if you will just actively listen, write it down, and remember.
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I get the Florida Realtor magazine because I am part of it, and they had talked about like the Ford method. So FORD. F is
Okay.
family, O is occupation, R is
Mhm.
recreation, and D is dreams. So I think like in my mind as I'm talking to people like, how's your family, or how's business going? What do you have planned coming up for the summer has to do with recreation. What's your next plans with your business? But I think McKay might put it a little easier. I'm going to be printing those out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, very cool. So you work with primarily occupiers, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, people are never going to go back to the office, and
Right.
what's the need for it? Office is dead." Can you speak a little bit to that and what you're seeing? And you've been in this industry quite some time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And listen, I want to acknowledge, that COVID had a very dramatic impact on our industry. But I wrote an article called "Are We Giving COVID Too Much Credit?" Because I think a lot of these trends and how we use office space were already underway. And the fact of the matter is, in 2007, when the iPhone debuted, that technology quickly evolved. And, we used to have to go to the office because that's how we did our work. To your reference to cards a minute ago, we physically had to be there. Well, now, of course, we have tools so we don't physically have to be there, but culturally, we need to be there. There are a lot of people who are unwell. We do a lot of studies, we see a lot of data of people who are lonely, who are not doing well in the isolated environment. I think the other thing is that a lot of office designs that happened pre COVID, and I remember listening into these conversations, real estate types wanted to create more density. They wanted more people and less space. And dare I say, we abused the worker. I think that, we all need respect and dignity. We need the ability to be able to not sit 12 inches from the next human being every day of our lives, and be able to spread out. We also need different ways to work, because sometimes you sit at your desk, sometimes you want to go soft seating, sometimes you need to have a meeting, a different type of conversation. So those trends were already underway. They were accelerated during COVID for obvious health reasons. But I remember in COVID, we talked a lot about the health issues of coming back to the office. You never hear that anymore. It went away. So, but what we do have, a lot of the reporting around this, I won't call out specific reporters, but first of all, there's some clickbait that's going on. And second of all, they report about office as if it's a monolithic office class. And the analogy I would use is, if I called you up and said, hey, Amy, how much does a car cost? You're going to say, well, okay, do you mean a Porsche 911 or do you mean a Honda Accord? And that's the way we need to look at the office market. There is the flight to quality, the very high end, and that's actually doing well. At the event that you were at and I were at last week in New York, that building's 100% leased, and it's amazing. It was beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So, what is going to happen going forward? Well, a couple of things. First of all, we got to go through this reset of capital markets. There is pain out there. I'm sorry that it's happening to people, but we've got to get through that. But the second thing that's going to happen is that business will grow again, as I said a minute ago. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the companies that win that are in the office to what happens to companies that are remote, because we're capitalists. And however you can make the most money that's the winner chicken dinner. So I believe that people who are in the office will win culturally. But I had a conversation with a real estate executive that has one of the largest portfolios in the world a couple of weeks ago, and he said something fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
He said the reason we are back in the office is the speed of business. He said, think about it. If I have to schedule a Teams call with you, maybe it's 10 days before I can get on your calendar, or I can see you walk in to get a cup of coffee and say, hey, what about this? And get a very quick decision, and we can speed things up. If we're together, we can work together much more rapidly.
That is true. I think sometimes we just trying to get somebody and like, hey, I need to have a 15-minute phone call. And it's like, I don't have 15. We just spent as much time as it would be probably to like schedule the meeting as the whole meeting
Right.
would end up taking place.
That's right.
And getting everybody on the same page versus people being, in the office and allowing magic to happen. So those that are occupying space, you talked a little bit about like the building that we were in. That would be kind of an A plus
Oh, definitely.
asset. And hold on just a second. I don't know.
We were at Hudson Yards,
Yeah.
and the other thing that the related companies, which is the landlord that owns Hudson Yards, they're very smart, very brilliant people. Is what they've mastered is it's not about the space, it's about the place.
Right.
It's about the area that we're in, the community. We all yearn to have that kind of. You walk down the street and you got multiple food options. You got a good coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
You got people pushing strollers and walking their dogs. That is the community that makes us feel welcomed and warm.
So the building that we were in, Class A Plus, had multiple amenities in it. So it kind of threw me off. If you want to go that thread one more time.
Yeah, so the related companies, which is really a very smart, leading innovating landlord, realizes that today in ultra Class A space, it's not about the space, it's about the place. So they've created a community, and they've created the amenities
Mm-hmm.
that are amazing. And I think fundamentally, we need to think about office space differently. It is only in the office world that we really think so much about how much we use it. For example, if we rent a hotel room, well, we rent it for 24 hours, but we're in there 33% of the time or less. But that's not something we think about. And so what I think about an office is it to some extent, it doesn't matter if you're in there Monday through Friday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. What impact is that having on your profits, on your growth, on the mission and culture building of your organization? It's just a tool.
Well, in versus office, you tend to be in it, even more than that, in a day. And it's not just something you're using to you're actually producing product to send out to people. It's a revenue generating tool.
It is, and but the my friends in finance and CFOs have a lot of angst about all this empty office space that's not getting used. Are we asking the wrong questions? Should we be asking, as Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, are we supercharging the productivity of our workforce and allowing for culture? Now, I don't have a problem personally with people taking flex days on Monday and Friday, but at the end of the day, for corporate employees, they're getting paid to do something.
Right.
And I'm aware that people are taking jobs that are remote only. Gosh, I don't know how that is great for your career. I have four wonderful kids, and my oldest son loves to go into the office because he can hear his boss talk. He can learn how things work. He can build relationships. There can be mentorship, and it's paying off. He's a super hard worker. I'm proud of him. But being physically present is good for your career as well.
I would think so too. Yeah, you're just around, and the energy and the connections. Yeah. As someone who's using office space, a question I would have: what should someone who's maybe thinking about expanding or in a space, what should they be worried about?
Okay, good question. Well, first it starts with the people that are going to use it. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the commute shed of people.
Mm-hmm.
So where people live, and we can calculate now with these great tech tools that we have the total commute time, the mean commute time, and we can see in rush and non-rush how long it's going to take people to get to the office. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is making sure, as we said a minute ago, that you're in an amenity-rich area.
Hmm.
Because if you're going to make the investment in office space, you really have two approaches. One is to go find a screaming deal, and there are some screaming deals out there, and just acknowledge that you're going to be in your father's office building, so to speak.
Right.
Or you can invest in quality, and there's some very green, energy efficient buildings that are being developed, like the one we were in New York. And then I think the third thing is the health of your landlord. And that's where a good tenant rep is going to come in. First of all, they should know about the capital stack of the building that they're showing you. We have databases, including a sponsor of CREi Summit, our friends at TREP, who
Yeah.
track data and around debt and can tell us with public debt if there are any issues. So you have to be aware and astute about the health of your landlord. But also, we need good documents. I had a situation about a year ago where we did a deal in another city with a very healthy landlord who then sold the building to someone that turned out to not be healthy. They took on too much debt.
Mm.
And so there are documents that you can work with the attorneys and with a good tenant rep broker to protect yourself. But boy, you got to be careful where you step. Make sure that you're stepping on a piece of solid dirt, not a lily pad.
Oh, that is good advice. And I had the opportunity to speak with an appraiser recently on the podcast, and she was saying, and if you find yourself all of a sudden in a situation and maybe your deal's already done or those types of things, and maybe the bank's gotten involved, she said banks don't really want to take these buildings back, and there could be opportunities too. Like if all of a sudden you're in this situation and there's nothing really, you're in a lease, you can't get out of the lease, but perhaps there are things you can go to the landlord and say, well, I'll stay and help to keep the income for the building going, to keep this going. Maybe opportunities to negotiate with the bank if it comes to that too. Have you seen
Yeah,
that at all?
sure. I mean, a friend of mine says the parties can always agree to agree. And what she means by that is that even though you have this document, this contract, this lease, you can still pick up the phone. We're all capitalists and business people. And you can say, listen, I need this favor, but I'll do this for you. Whatever the
Yeah.
particular situation is, you shouldn't be afraid to pick up the person that controls the asset manager, and see if you can make a deal. Or even better yet, call your tenant rep and get them involved, put them to work.
Yes. Get your tenant rep involved. Yes. Yes. But that's 100% the case. Well, this has been really great. One thing that really stands out to me that we continue to talk about is the networking and relationships have been really central to your work. You talk about meeting with different executives, and of course, you have the
Yeah.
CREi. Do you have any particular examples, or do you want to discuss about how a strong network has influenced your career?
Well, they say your network is your net worth. I firmly believe that. It's how I've made my living,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't. I collect relationships and people. I just love people. I love leaning in and investing people. But I also think that we need to be careful about the people that we collect. And so
Yes.
you sort of curate the right people in your life so that you have the right positive influences. We all have heard the story that if you get the wrong people around you, you can turn into a very negative and complaining person. But there is no doubt that if you're a young person in college listening to this, or if you're young in your career, if you will be intentional about building the database, however you choose to do it, you use Salesforce, it doesn't matter. Whatever the CRM, you need a personal CRM to manage your relationships and treat people well. Amy, I know you do this. I do it. I meet with a lot of people, a lot of people's kids, and we spend a lot of time helping people without the specific regard of what we're going to get back, and that's just called investing in your network, and that's so important. But when you need help, if you need to get in to get a medical procedure, or your kid got in trouble and you need help there, or whatever the situation is, if you have the right network, you can solve a lot of problems quickly.
Oh yeah. And speaking of that, I had, I had no voice on Friday. So
Yeah.
I was really concerned about today. And I was able to, on Monday, I texted my friend that I knew her husband was a ENT, and they got me into the ENT Monday
There you
afternoon. And
go.
woohoo, I have a voice. So it's still
There
not
you
like
go.
100%, but yeah, you never know. But, you don't want to call in favors too much, but obviously your time's valuable. And I did not want to reschedule on anyone I had scheduled. And I'm like, I got to get
Uh,
my voice back. And I like to talk. So,
yeah. No, I'm glad you're well and happy to hear that.
yeah. So, well,
Speaking of the
go ahead.
value of time, if I could share that
Yeah.
a lot of people in a commission only industry don't know how to value their time. And so let me suggest something, the 2080 principle. And the 2080 principle is the number of working hours in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And no, that doesn't account for vacation. You can go figure the math out if you want. But here's how to value your time. If there are 2,080 working hours in a year, and let's say you set a goal to make $500,000 a year net to you, so it's pretty good.
Right.
So it's $477 an hour. And I don't know what splits are with people's shops, but let's just make it simple and say you give 50% of your income to your shop. So now your time is worth almost $1,000 an hour. And so the way this works, when you take kids bowling and you have those gutter guards, this is a gutter guard for your time in the sense that you can make a decision. So I go to landlord events if I have a friend there or I'm doing a deal in the building or I have a reason to be there. But when I was a young broker, landlord would call and say, "Hey, Ken, come to our event. You can win a flat screen TV and get a free pork sandwich." Okay. But now, if you think about it, it took 90 minutes. You spent $1,500 for that free pork sandwich. So let's just be smart about our time. It doesn't, it shuts down when you get home because time with your
Yeah.
family is priceless. You can't apply that to your personal time with your spouse, time with your kids, but very much in the business environment. It's at least how I guard my time.
Yeah, I've worked with the Massimo Group, Rod Santomassimo, that's pretty involved with CREi,
Right.
and I've had stickies before. Is this really worth, and I did have a sticker that says $1,000. Is it really worth that? And I don't have as many working hours that I have kids. So I don't necessarily use the 2080 principle. I think I use something like 1600 or something like that. But
Sure.
whatever you think your working hours are, you have to think really intentionally about, whether that's going to generate that. Because otherwise you're just going to find yourself working all hours of night, weekends, burning out. And, a lot of people are in this business for flexibility, but by not honoring your time, you're taking that away from yourself. And
That's right.
no, I think that's really, really sage advice for anyone getting out there, because you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So
Amen. Well said.
yeah, this is one of my favorite sayings. So yeah, I think that's great. So is there anything else you want to chat about today?
Well, two quick things. First of all, I just want to compliment you. I'm so excited by the growth of this podcast and by the growth of your listenership, and thank you for pouring into this. And you are such a giver to this community.
Oh,
So thank
thanks.
you for all you do, Amy. I'm very proud of you. But the second is back to someone who's getting started. When I started in this commission only crazy world, I took up a position at Cushman Wakefield, the only company I ever wanted to work for. I was very excited. And I didn't want to draw because that's just a debt. So I had no income, and I went home that night, and Karen and I had dinner, my wonderful wife, and I talked way too long about it, probably 30 minutes. And then at the end, she said, "Well, I have some news too." And I thought we were going to talk about the social plans for the weekend, and she said, "I'm pregnant." So I knew I had 9 months, and I immediately started valeting cars, as I mentioned earlier. But you know what? And I wanted to quit. I mean, the self doubt was enormous. I was scared to call people. I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't even know how to get somebody on the phone. But if I can make it, you can make it. If I can figure this thing out, and my oldest guy is in commercial real estate. He works at an industrial shop, and he's a hard worker. My second oldest guy is in commercial real estate. He got married last weekend, and now they're making it. So I think this industry is about making lots of the correct small decisions in
Mhm.
life as opposed to one big, large decision. And it is absolutely about the discipline and sticking with it and overcoming your fears and self doubt. Because if you're good to people and you work hard, you're responsive, and you really learn your industry, you can make it in this business. So if you're out there and you're struggling, just know there's hope. Put your head down and go to work.
Yeah, I think there's no shortcut to hard work. Eddie Gonzalez, who's part of our family over at CREi Plus, he talked about on my podcast that he literally would finish and he would go bartend at night.
Yep.
I haven't spoken about it a lot, but since we're on the conversation, I was still working at my husband's law firm as I was getting this started. And
Yeah.
it would be so hard. And I actually convinced my husband, I'm like, can your receptionist like answer like the 5 phone calls I'm getting a week? That
Yeah.
way, like it seems as though like I have something and, puff up my chest a little bit and put it out there. And she's great. Actually, she's in real estate now and she's doing great. But I think you got to do what you got to do. And so I think sometimes I've heard people give the advice like, you just have to jump all in and go for broke. And I don't necessarily agree with that because then, either you're taking a draw or you're getting into debt. If there is a way where you can balance the two until you really get traction and you start to get a large pipeline of commissions that are coming in and you can manage both and make something work, I don't see a disadvantage to it. And honestly, my focus was office, professional users, attorneys. It wasn't going to hurt me. It was actually going to benefit me to continue to kind of stay connected to that field at that time, strategically. And, I've been able to help lots of attorneys in Orlando. It's been, awesome. It's awesome to do. But like, I think people shouldn't be afraid of if you need to go valet cars, if you need to, take on some contract work at night or whatever until with the life cycle of your deals, it could take, a year before you get your first commission check, maybe even
Yeah.
longer if it's a large deal.
It took me 8 months. And we took, for my first deal, we took some of the dollars from that commission check. We bought the bed frame. We sleep into this very day. So I wake up every morning and I'm grateful. So I want to, Amy, I know there are a lot of people who are suffering now in our business. And maybe you're not even at the beginning of your career, you're in the middle of the career. Just know I had that issue too in the middle of my career. It's when I met Coy Davidson and got involved in social media, which changed my life, by the way. But if you're hurting now, keep your head high, as you said, Amy. Swallow your pride and do what you need to do to support your family. But stay with it. This is a great industry. We're in a tough spot, but we'll come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wise advice. Yeah. No matter where you are in your career, I think you have to do what you need to get it done. It doesn't make sense, especially if you invested so much into this, to, just hang your hat and, I think just keep, do what you need to do. And if someone sees you out there slinging drinks or whatever it is you need to do to keep going, just, do it. Do what's best for your family, especially if you're really good at what you do. So, because this comes
Sure.
in cycles, as you said.
Yep, it does.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. So,
Yeah.
how do people get a hold of you? Is it
Oh,
LinkedIn or what's the best way?
well, you can put in almost any social at Ken Ashley and find me, or just Google. Send me a DM or send me an email. Executives around America still read their email every day. ken.ashley@cushwake.com. And I would say this to anyone. We all get a lot of email correspondence. So if you don't immediately see a reply, then hit me up again. It's nothing personal. It's just managing the volume of communication. So,
Yeah.
but it's been a pleasure to be with you, Amy.
Or maybe putting your like, I heard you on the podcast. And then be like, oh, let me open this.
That's a great tip. Yeah, we could do that.
Oh my goodness. I had a dinner with some ladies at Beth Azor's conference, like
Yeah.
literally 6 weeks ago. And I promised everybody I was going to do a group email. I finally got around to it today. And in my email, I was like, better late than never, ... This is the email I said I would do from the dinner, ... And then like, I got replies from like everybody making like an interesting email subject line can get people to open it up. So yeah. So
Hey, before we go, you
Yeah.
mentioned Beth Azor, and I just the ladies that were in the video that was released today about conference safety and about safety in general. I thought that was a very powerful story. I want to compliment everyone that stepped forward and did that, and just know that you have allies in Menfolk, and we need to look out for each other. It's a what the video talked about is safety and not getting a substance put in your drink at a conference, or finding yourself in an unsafe environment. And so I totally support that. I'm glad we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I are out on the conference circuit, so to anybody out there, if you need help, reach out to either one of us. I'm sure we'll be standing ready to help.
And I would like to put out there, I've always felt really safe at CREi Summit. You guys have a great code of conduct and code of ethics. I think you call it like a code of, and I think,
Yep.
it's a giver's environment, it's not a taker's. So, never say never, but, I felt comfortable and everything with everybody, but that's not to say, not to use your product. But thank you for
Yeah,
that. I'm glad that I'm in a position in my career where I can put myself out there along with these other women, and we say what should be said and bring awareness to it.
indeed. Well done.
And I think the only people that are going to have problems with it are maybe things that will affect them negatively. So that's what I
Yeah,
figure. So I'm just like, we'll see what happens. But thank you so much. And
yeah,
I appreciate for everybody for tuning in today. Let's all continue to go beyond and strengthen that performance mindset. This is Amy Calandrino signing off.